Alright, hello and welcome to 99geek.ca presents an audiobook podcast of my book, A Suburban Fantasy. It's a story about Rachel and Smith, a teenage girl that gets turned into a vampire against her will um, by an evil serial killing monster in the city of Toronto. And she manages to escape and return to her friends who help her cope with becoming a vampire. So first of all, I want to apologize for taking so long. Let me mute my phone. For taking so long to release this podcast. I was busy working on the chapter of the month for my Patreon page at patreon.com/99geek. But of course, you can find links to everything on my website, 99geek.ca. It's still, yeah. My computer says it's dropping frames. It's not supposed to be doing that. Stop it. Hopefully it doesn't drop audio at least. That's the important thing. I mean, it can drop some frames if it wants to. So welcome. Um, as I said, I've been working on really hard on the new chapter, which is now up for everyone to read if you wanted to. It's on my blog as well. If you don't want to pay the dollar, I've been releasing my chapters for free on the blog as well as reading here. We are way far behind of where we are on the Patreon. Like there's 1,000 pages between us. So absolutely, if you are enjoying what you hear on this podcast, you should check out my Patreon page. You could always even subscribe and insist that your money get put towards improving the podcast if you want to see better production values. Maybe maybe music in the beginning, for instance. That would probably be nice, or something like that. I mean, you guys have the power to make a change. Just suggest it somehow. Contact me if you don't want to pay any money or anything. There are other ways to contact me. You can comment on my blog. You can follow me at Twitter at Andrew Gatesy. That's ANDREWGECZY. And if you follow me there, you can message me and tell me how much you love this podcast or how much you hate this podcast and you hope I die. Um, anyway, so without further ado, previously on A Suburban Fantasy, uh, Rachel Lynn Smith is a vampire now, and her friends have been helping her out, as I think I previously mentioned. In this chapter, there's Tanya Dayton. She is the student president of Abbey Park in Oakville. They live in Oakville, Ontario, and geez, it looks like it's dropping a lot of frames here. Should I be worried? It's dropped frames 2 minutes ago. Oh, okay, that's not so bad. It made it sound scarier than it was. Alright, so where was I? Tanya Dayton, student council president. She's the most popular girl in school, and she has a thing for Rachel Lynn Smith. She has other friends. Ian also has a thing for her, Ian Fletcher. So there's this whole triangle going on. Having a terrible job describing any of this. Later on, as I continue writing and get to the later books and things like that, I've started adding previously on to the beginning of every chapter. So that becomes much easier. I keep honing the craft as I go. I explained that in the beginning that every chapter is going to keep getting better because I keep learning as I go. And this was very much, I wrote this first book right out of university. Right out of university. Like, I was looking back and I have notes on it from like 2010. Like, I wrote this a long, long time ago. So I've definitely improved a lot since then. This was my first book, really. But this chapter should be good. Let's check it out. So, Chapter 10, The Modern Mage. This is Act 3. We have entered Act 3. The Suburban Vampire is the name of this act. That was actually the name of the book until I changed it to Suburban Fantasy, and then I changed the series to Urban Fantasy, and Suburban Fantasy to Season 1 of Urban Fantasy. I'm going to stop talking and just start reading now. So, Chapter 10, The Modern Mage. Hannah Lynn woke up alone Saturday morning, her husband suspiciously absent from her side, though the clock hadn't even hit 7. It was unfortunate for him, too, as she had been having a very good dream. She much preferred her dream to reality. In her dream, she was the CEO of Lynn Enterprises, a $1 billion corporation that did. Well, honestly, she wasn't sure what they did, but it wasn't important to the plot of the dream. She was bent over in front of a large wall of glass overlooking New York City, wearing an expensive suit and being ravaged quite passionately by her husband Eric across her one-of-a-kind polished mahogany desk. In reality, she was naked, jobless, and her husband had disappeared at pretty much the worst time. She tried falling back into the dream, but a giggle from downstairs made that all but impossible. The mood was gone. It took a few tries to get out of bed. Throwing on a robe from her bathroom, Hannah plucked a couple stray hairs from her brow line as she passed the mirror. In the hallway, she wasn't too surprised to find Jacob's room empty. She knew his giggle anywhere. She could see Rachel's room across the hall was also empty. Her bed was made again this morning. Hannah was pretty sure it had been made almost every day since Rachel had returned. Was that girl actually feeling guilty for running away? Hannah didn't know how to read her daughter anymore. Sometimes she felt like Rachel was really opening up, but other times she wasn't so sure. Rachel had been more confident lately, and more independent even, but also more distant. Hannah would have sworn she was losing her daughter if Rachel hadn't been seemingly going out of her way to be nice and courteous to her mother. She was always cleaning up after herself now, doing her dishes, her laundry, and she'd even stopped fighting with her brother. Hannah didn't know if she should be happy for her daughter or worried. She found her family in the living room. Her husband was sitting cross-legged in front of the TV beside their son. Rachel was on the couch behind them, and they were playing some three-player Mario game on their Nintendo console. Rachel laughed at something that happened on the TV, and it must have been very funny, as Hannah hardly ever heard her daughter laugh anymore. "You can't just throw us at him," Rachel complained playfully. Eric laughed. "Says who?" he said. Oh, that's... Who's Eric? Eric is... Oh, yes, that's right. Eric is her father. This is the first time somebody has referred to him by his first name. Um... Eric laughed. "Says who?" he asked, slapping the controller from his son's hand. "You killed me too," Jacob complained with more giggles. "Come on, man." He pushed his dad. "Just 'cause you suck doesn't mean you have to bring the rest of us down." "It doesn't matter," Rachel told them. "We needed more lives for that part anyway." Eric looked back at Rachel as she talked, and noticed Hannah standing in the doorway. "Honey, you're up," he said in surprise, getting to his feet. "Told you," Rachel mumbled from the couch. Eric flashed Hannah the same lopsided grin she fell in love with at university. As they grew old together, Hannah was really coming to realize Eric's smile was one thing that would never change, along with his maturity. Hannah sometimes wondered if she was really a mother of three. "How long have you been up?" she asked. Her husband draped his arms around her shoulders. "I can't remember," he told her. He added defensively, "Jacob was already up." "So you woke up Rachel?" Hannah complained. "I didn't give them bedtime so that they could be woken up at all hours of the night." "It was not all hours," Eric insisted. "Between like 5 and 6. We started playing and she just joined us 10 minutes in." "Don't be mad this early in the morning," she begged, leaning in and kissing her. He begged, leaning in and kissing her. "The day hasn't even started yet." His lips felt familiar and inviting, and Hannah had to try extra hard not to kiss back. "It's the weekend," Eric argued in his defense, noticing that his affection wasn't being returned. "They don't even have bedtimes anymore." Hannah knew he was right. By their agreement, the kids got to follow his rules on the weekends, and her rules during the week. There was nothing in the agreement about having to like each other's rules. With a sigh, she left the doorway and shuffled into the kitchen. "I'm making breakfast," she called to them, "so finish your game if you don't want to starve." She had a plan this time, it forming fast in her mind as she turned her stove on and grabbed the paper from the porch. It was 20 minutes before her family joined her, still laughing about some kill or another. Hannah didn't bother herself with those kinds of things, even though she had once thought Eric cute for enjoying them. She didn't know if any other woman would be able to put up with it. "Smells good," Jacob said, taking a seat at the table. Eric came around and looked at the newspaper she was flipping through while she put the finishing touches on her secret weapon. "You're already looking for a job this early in the morning?" Eric asked her. "You can't take a break for one Saturday?" "No, I can't take a break," Hannah hissed at him. She'd had to pull from their life savings to pay the mortgage yesterday, and she hated every time she had to take anything from there. To her, it felt like taking steps backward against all the progress they'd made towards beating the only game that should matter to anyone, the game of life. "The world doesn't stop for Saturday morning cartoons." She was getting distracted, though. She couldn't forget about her plan. "Rachel, honey," Hannah called to her daughter across the kitchen, "I made pancakes this morning. I know they're your favorite." Rachel shook her head. "I already had breakfast," she told her mom. Hannah's daughter wouldn't meet her eyes, and she kept twirling her hair distractedly. All tells that her daughter was lying to her. "Was that before or after kicking Bowser's ass?" Jacob asked. "You were with us all morning." Well, I'm not hungry," Rachel insisted, wrinkling her nose at them. "Come on, honey. Honor us." Oh, that's the father. "Come on, honey. Honor us with your presence, oh my Lady of Darkness," Eric pleaded. The boys had been making fun of Rachel over the last few days for wearing black lipstick and fingernail paint. "I'm not goth," she said quietly, taking a seat at the table. Hannah grabbed a pile of pancakes with her spatula and dropped them on Rachel's plate. "Look, eat at least a few bites," she urged her daughter. "There's no meat." "Speak for yourself," Jacob told them, grabbing 2 pancakes and using them as the bread in a heaping bacon sandwich. He smothered the whole thing in syrup and took a mighty but messy bite. Eric watched his son with what seemed like envy or maybe pride. That looks like a good idea," he said, grabbing a pile of bacon for himself. Hannah reached over and pulled half the pile from his plate. "It's also a heart attack waiting to happen," she told him sternly. He frowned, but took his remaining bacon without complaint. "So, I was thinking we could continue this game morning into more of a game day," Eric said to Jacob and Rachel between bites. "What do you think?" "I think I can't," Rachel said, checking the time on her phone. "Jason got a job in Mississauga, and I said I'd go with him on his first day." "Really?" Hannah asked. She'd been handing out her resume to every place she could think of all week. Almost no one had called back, and the few interviews she did get ended up going terribly for her. She had long since passed her being angry at the interviewers phase and entered into her feeling sorry for herself phase. How was she supposed to support her family in this kind of economy? "What kind of job did he get?" Hannah asked her daughter, ripping off a chunk from a pancake with her fingers and dipping it in syrup. Rachel looked up from her untouched plate and shrugged. "Some construction thing," she told Hannah. "Turns out they're working on our old street." Eric dropped his fork. "I still miss those days." "Oh, sure, why not? I still miss those days and that house," he admitted to them. Uh, "Well, good for Jason," Hannah said, trying hard as she could not to sound bitter. She didn't do a good job. Today, everything was going to change. She had 3 interviews and was mining the deep recesses of her mind for positivity. But all her wells seemed tapped out. She had to keep telling herself today would be the day, else risk a complete breakdown in front of her family. She was trying really hard not to be the bitch. She always felt like she had to put in such an effort. She was really trying, but it was a battle she wasn't winning. "Why don't you try to get a job?" she asked her husband. Eric shrunk his head a little, and immediately Hannah felt guilty for even bringing it up. I'm working on my novel," he told her. "I'm on the last act. Gabu the polar bear finally thwarts an evil conspiracy with other packs and fights his evil nemesis in an action-packed finale." Hannah could feel her anger rising in her throat and wished her husband would just keep his mouth shut. "Oh, goody!" she said sarcastically, taking a comfort bite from a greasy strip of bacon. "Can't wait to see what wonderful new things your book will provide for this family." She knew the only thing it would provide was a new paperweight to go on their bookshelf and a never-ending struggle to keep the wooden structure from floating away. Sorry I can't stay, Rachel said as her phone made some annoying sound. They're outside. Itchy, itchy head. She hopped off her stool and grabbed her umbrella on her way out the door. Hannah thought it odd that Rachel would go for an umbrella when it looked like it was going to be the sunniest day of the year. Rachel's pancakes still sat untouched on her plate, and she hadn't even sipped her orange juice. Not the orange juice. Mike's black Mitsubishi. Oh, I forgot to say scene change. Scene change. Alright. Mike's black Mitsubishi was waiting for Rachel in the driveway as she closed the door behind her. She'd received Jason's text last night asking all his friends if someone could drive him to Mississauga Saturday morning. It went without saying that his parents wouldn't do it. Rachel would have been surprised had Jason even asked them. She didn't have a car and would have dismissed his text had something not caught her eye. She had once lived on the same street he was told to report to, though she hadn't seen it since she was like 7. Upon learning that Mike was going to be driving Jason, Rachel texted them asking if she could come along for the ride. "You know," Mike called out from the driver's seat, "maybe a little sun would do you good." He was referring, of course, to the umbrella she carried with her everywhere. Over the rest of last week, talk quickly began to spread across school of Rachel and her umbrella. It had become quite clear to everyone interested that she didn't like the sun. People only took her behavior as more evidence that she was turning goth. "Just drive," she mumbled to Mike as she got in the back seat. She hadn't been trying to turn goth. It was true that she'd been wearing black lipstick, but it hadn't been any conscious choice on her part. Black just seemed to work well with her increasingly darker wardrobe. Water break, do 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 do. Water break, do 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 do. Besides, she liked black. It was certainly better than using girly colors like red and pink. But couldn't a girl like black without being goth, or what was with everyone's insistence on labeling everything, and worse, giving those labels negative stigma? She just wanted to be herself, not a goth teenage vampire. And she was finding that harder and harder to do, especially without the help of her friends. Both Tanya and Ian had been avoiding her all week since their impromptu field trip on Wednesday. Every time Rachel tried to force a confrontation, Ian would only run yelping to the nearest bathroom. Rachel could have pushed it and just gone in after him, but she just couldn't be bothered. She had been far too preoccupied with her schoolwork. Studying had become the distraction of choice, keeping Rachel from getting into any more fights. She had to admit she'd sort of scared herself Wednesday night, and now with many of her friends avoiding her, she was beginning to wonder if maybe they were growing scared of her too. Lucky for her, Jason was scared of no one, and Mike didn't even know she was a vampire. "So, finally got a job, huh, buddy?" Mike asked Jason in the passenger seat. Rachel could only see Jason's camo shirt sleeve from where she was sitting. "Yeah," Jason said in his deep voice. "Thought it was about time I rose to do my duty." More than likely, Jason had just grown tired of having to beg his parents just to eat every night. I brought beers in the trunk," Mike said, gesturing to behind them. "So while you're being treated like a sweaty sack of meat by your boss, Rachel and I will be by the car throwing some back." Jason leaned around his chair. "You think you can reach in there and pass me a few?" Jason asked Rachel. "Let's see how many I can chug before we get there." Mike pushed Jason back into his seat. "We're almost there now," Mike told him. "Besides, one of us will have to be the designated driver." Rachel would have nominated herself, but she hadn't even gotten her learner's permit yet. "So, do you remember this place much?" Mike asked Rachel, as they passed the imaginary line between Oakville and Mississauga. "Not so much," Rachel admitted. Her memories of life before Oakville were hazy at best, non-existent at worst. They'd lived there until she was almost 7, and yet all she could remember was that she'd been really sick for a month. "I think you have to turn here," Jason said, pointing to the next street. "Yeah?" Mike asked. "How would you know?" He gave Jason a long glance. "I memorized the route this morning," he told them confidently. It was tactically the right move. I think we can all agree. Turn here and follow the bend for a while. Yes, Mike said, following Jason's lead. Lieutenant, he added under his breath with a grin. They were driving into the upper-class area of Mississauga, and it was obvious all around them. Rachel's old neighborhood had a barrier of trees surrounding it and protecting it from the highway on one side and the rest of the city on the other. The trees were listing lazily past the tinted car windows as Rachel looked out into what seemed like a dense forest on either side. She knew better, of course. Knew the forest came to an end shortly beyond her sight, but it was a convincing sight, none the less. Breaking through the foliage, they found themselves in a suburb not too different from the one they had just left in Oakville. Only the houses here were even more extravagant, if that were possible. Mike whistled. "Your family must have been loaded when you lived here," he remarked to her with a shake of his head. "My mom had snagged a pretty good position at Credit Valley Hospital," Rachel remembered, "but she had to give it up when we moved." "Sounds like a Shakespearean tragedy," Mike said with a shake of his head. "Look at that house," he added with a point of his finger. "4 garage doors?" Rachel had to laugh even as Mike continued. "Why the heck would you need 4 garage doors?" "For your Panzer tanks," Jason said, staring at the house with mock envy. Or maybe it was real envy. "A hockey celebrity lived in one of those houses," Rachel told them, leaning into the front seat to point at a house coming up. Mike whistled again. "Local fame," he said with a playful moan. "I love this place. How much do you think one of those houses would go for?" "I seem to remember the 4 garage doors went for $2.5 million," Rachel told Mike. She remembered her mom reading an article in the paper out loud about it. Mike tapped his steering wheel with his thumb in thought. I wonder if 4 garage doors is worth 2.5, he pondered out loud. "It is if you have a Panzer tank," Jason said. Reading the nearest street sign, Jason added, "Turn here," pointing to just past a house with toilet paper strewn across the lawn and the trees. On second thought, Rachel was pretty sure that was the local celebrity's house. Mike followed Jason's command and asked, "What was the street name again?" "Tipperary," Rachel and Jason both answered at the same time. Things were absolutely oddly familiar, but she was having a hard time quite placing everything. It became a little easier when they turned onto her old street, and Rachel breathed a silent sigh of relief when they passed the construction barriers to find that her house was not the one they were going to demolish. Mike parked in the designated area, and the 2 boys stepped out into the sun. It had fully risen now, and the light was a little intimidating for Rachel. Why isn't that capitalized? What if it was too sunny and her... Why is that capitalized? What if it was too sunny and her umbrella didn't work? What if she burst into flames in front of everyone? They were illogical fears, and she knew that. She was going to get out of the vehicle. It was just maybe going to take a little bit. Water break. Do-do-do-do-do. Oh, delicious. Chef's kiss. Alright, where are we? Bursting into flames, illogical fears. It's gonna take a little bit. The street looked like a normal suburban street, except for the one building that had been cornered off with construction barriers. Within those lines, the construction crew had brought in equipment including fire trucks, bulldozers, cement trucks, and more, even a crane. The parking area was right beside a line of trailers in the front of the property. Finally opening the door and then her umbrella, Rachel stepped out into her own handheld shade and shot Jason a private triumphant look. You all right?" Jason whispered to Rachel. "I'll be okay," she told him, victorious in her efforts to keep the sun from cooking her like bacon. She didn't know if Jason knew, but there was a man fast approaching them. She'd heard him coming from the moment he stepped out from his trailer. He was a balding, middle-aged man, with overalls on top of an iron dress shirt and a yellow hard hat held under his arm. Let me just lower that a bit. Okay, that's cool. Held under his arm. You kids better have clearance, or else I'm personally booting you all to the curb. Whoa, Jason said, raising his arms in surrender. I'm the new guy, Jason Stride. The man stopped his anger The man stopped, his anger successfully deflected. We talked over the phone, he told Jason in a gruff voice, offering his hand. Name's Rex. I'm heading this project. Rex? Mike asked, as Jason shook the man's hand. Is that a nickname? Yeah. As a matter of fact, my obsessed parents called me Tyrannosaurus. Care to guess what they were obsessed with? Jason quickly explained. These are my friends, Mike and Rachel. As Mike also shook the man's hands. Was it dinosaurs? Mike guessed. Rex shook his head. Godzilla. Of course, that's what they named their first son. I was number 3. He raised a few fingers. Well, sir, Jason said, standing at attention with a salute, I'm reporting for duty. Did you bring a hard hat? Rex asked Jason. Jason's shoulders sunk, and he winced. I didn't know I needed one, he told the man. Rex handed over his hat. Take mine, he said. I can get another easily enough. He pointed to the house they'd surrounded. We're tearing it down today. You mean you need me at the controls? Jason asked, pointing to the wrecking ball that hung loose from the parked crane. Rex chuckled. Nah, we're blowing it sky high with C4. If Rachel tried to guess from reading Jason's face, she'd think he had just won the lottery. Can I plant one myself? Jason begged. You wouldn't need to show me. I already know how. It all got set up yesterday, Rex told him, shattering his dreams. I just need you to help my crew make sure the area's clear. Then meet me back here. Your real work won't start till the cleanup phase. And we'll stay here and be absolutely silent, Mike told Rex, locking his lips with an imaginary key. Damn right, the older man said, leading Jason away from them so he could start his first day on the job. They grow up so fast, Mike joked, pulling a beer from his trunk. He cracked it and leaned casually against his car. Can't wait to see this thing blow up. I'm going to take a look around, Rachel told Mike, wanting to remember which house was hers. Right, Mike said. Go for it. Jog that memory. His enthusiasm seemed to be growing. Want me to come with? He asked with sudden interest. He took a deep swig of his beer. I think that would defeat the purpose, she told him after a moment's consideration. Part of her did want him to come, but it was the same part of her she'd been ignoring for 16 years. It didn't take her long to spot her old house. Built with polished white bricks, the large home was also distinct for its beautiful crystalline doorway. Seeing the house again for the first time in almost a decade, Rachel had to wonder how much her mom gave up for their move to Oakville. It was a richer suburb, sure, but their townhouse was half the size. The new owners seemed to be responsible people. At least the lawn was well mowed, and the windows were all squeaky clean. The garden was beautiful, better even than she could remember. Not that she could remember much of the outside. She wished she could see the inside again, but there was no way she was going to ask. She could still remember her earliest memory vividly, but everything after that was a complete blank. She'd been riding her tricycle down the street just before she'd gotten sick for a month. She'd stopped at a house, and that was all there was. Everything that happened in her life before those moments leading up to that house were a complete mystery to Rachel. She tried to follow the sidewalk, wondering what had happened at the house. Why was it the only thing Rachel could remember of her early childhood? The house was exactly the one about to be demolished. Of course. Coincidence? They're almost ready, Mike told her from his car. Rachel remembered to close her mouth and joined Mike on the hood. Jason just came out and they're preparing to blow the thing. I've got perfect timing then, Rachel said ironically. She tried to hide her disappointment from Mike, as she wasn't quite sure how she could explain it. She just had a weird feeling about the house. Like maybe it was a good thing they were blowing it up. "Brace yourselves!" Rex yelled from his place at the head of the huddle, where the construction crew were waiting. "Cover your ears. We're detonating in 10, 9, 8. Mike covered his ears as they both watched the house with anticipation. 6, 5. Aren't you going to cover your ears?" Mike asked Rachel. "Whatever," she said with a shrug. 3. Jesus, Rachel," Mike said with a panic, covering her ears with his hands. "Oh, for God's sakes!" Rachel exclaimed, rolling her eyes at his thoughtfulness. She leaned her umbrella against her shoulder and covered his ears with her hands as the countdown ended. 1. There was a second's-long pause that seemed to last forever before the house just ripped apart with the loudest noise Rachel had ever heard. The car shook beneath them, shook them so hard she felt her bones would shake free from her skin. The walls disintegrated apart and collapsed in on the structure, dust quickly rising until no one on the block could see more than a couple feet in front of them. "Wow," Mike said breathlessly as his hands dropped in shock from her face. Rachel was surprisingly shaken by the blast, and she fell into his chest, pushing him back against the windshield. There were a couple of calls of surprise from the front as the dust began to settle. Rachel wasn't sure at first what the commotion was all about, but she could hear a lot of people talking very fast, and they all seemed extremely confused. "Does anyone have a phone? Does anyone have a phone?" Rachel could hear Rex yell from somewhere in the dust. As more of the air cleared, and Rachel and Mike both caught sight of what had everyone so wound up, the second floor of the house had remained, even as the rest of the house had fallen away around it. All the walls were gone, every support beam, but still the floor remained, floating where the second story of the house used to be, like it was stuck to the space itself. "Can someone get me a phone and dial the damned mayor?" Rex ordered angrily to anyone who would listen. Scene change. Scene change. Scene change. What time is it now? It is 7:19. Yeah, we're making good time, I think. Good time indeed. Tanya was surprised to meet Ian's mother for the first time as the red-haired woman answered the door seconds after Tanya had knocked. "Can I help ye?" That was not sounding very womanly-like at all. "Can I help ye? Can I help ye?" There we go. "Can I help ye?" the woman asked Tanya. "Yeah," Tanya asked. "I'm looking for Ian." "He's not out of bed yet," his mother told her. "You know boys and their cartoons." Tanya didn't, but smiled and said to the woman what she wanted to hear. Absolutely." She waited. "Can I come in, Mrs. Fletcher?" she asked at last. "Oh, he might not be decent, but you're welcome to check if you wish," the woman said, stepping aside and letting Tanya in. "Thank you," Tanya said, taking the stairs up 3 at a time. "To the right!" his mother yelled from downstairs. Sure enough, Ian was seemingly naked under his covers, and he quickly dropped his pillow over his lap as she came in. A TV blared in the corner of the room, and if Tanya was to guess, Ian had been touching himself to whatever had been on. "Do you mind?" he complained to Tanya as she closed the door behind her. "I mean, first you ruined my life with all your stupid secrets, and now I can't even watch Saturday morning cartoons without you barging in and killing my fun." He caught her glance at his pillow and added with a hint of embarrassment, "Not that kind of fun." Tanya really didn't care. "Did Rachel tell you anything yet?" "Oh, did you tell... I'm sorry. Tanya didn't really care. "Did you tell Rachel anything yet?" she asked. "No," Ian said. "You told me not to. I've been avoiding her, and it's made my life miserable." "Well, I'm sorry," Tanya told him. "I just didn't want to tell her until we got a chance to talk to O'Byrne for ourselves." "You just like calling all the shots," Ian grumbled under his breath. "Speaking of which," Tanya said as she picked up a pair of Ian's boxers from an open drawer beside her and threw them to Ian, "get dressed. O'Byrne teaches remedial science today, and we're going to use that as our chance to talk to him." The science teacher had been sick on Thursday. Their class had been taught by a substitute. Mr. O'Byrne had apparently returned on Friday, but by Tanya's spare he'd already gone home early for some rest. Some extra rest. "What time is his class today?" Ian asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "I don't know," Tanya admitted to him. "I'm not in remedial science. That's why you need to get dressed now." "Can't I at least finish Thundercats?" Ian asked, gesturing to the TV. Tanya followed his gaze in surprise. "Thundercats?" she repeated to herself. "You were serious about watching Saturday morning cartoons?" It wasn't exactly the kind of programming she'd ever be caught touching herself to. Scene change, scene change, scene change. Hannah Lynn hadn't realized that the school was still open on weekends. But the classified ad had clearly said secretary wanted, Abbey Park School, interviews at 9:30 a.m. And sure enough, the door opened easily with Hannah's loose grip, allowing her to step timidly into the front hall. She'd worn her best black skirt suit, and her heels tapped loudly against the hard floor with each step. The noise ricocheted off every wall in the empty building, making the whole thing seem even more intimidating than it already was. She had to pull herself together. Her heart kept racing even though she knew she was overreacting. After all, she was overqualified for the position. She just had to act confident and blow her interview away. Hannah found a woman in the office, sitting in one of the visitors' chairs with a Tupperware container sitting closed on her lap. The woman smiled up at her. "Oh, you must be here for the interview as well," she said from under her flowery hat. She was wearing a pink cardigan and jeans with a Winnie the Pooh belt buckle. Behind her, Rachel's computer teacher, Mr. Martin, was drilling a new pane of glass into the wall. "What happened here?" Hannah asked, sitting down beside the woman. "There was a shooting here last week," the woman said in a hushed tone. "They're trying not to let that get out." "Last time I tell you anything," muttered Mr. Martin from behind his bushy mustache. "A shooting? That's horrible," Hannah said, feeling sick to her stomach. "It's like there's nowhere safe anymore." "Yeah," the woman agreed in a way that made it sound like she didn't really agree. "But my friend from Jersey, she says that this sort of thing happens all the time. There's just so many damn people in the world that chances are it still won't happen to us. The leading cause of death, after all, is heart disease." Hannah didn't know what to make of the woman. Was that supposed to be comforting? The woman just kept on smiling. "It means, my dear," she said, "that the odds are in our favor." Hannah completely disagreed. 100% of people born eventually die, she said, her eyes narrowing as she leaned over the armrest at the woman in pink. "Why don't you try turning those odds in our favor?" The woman's smile faded. Vice Principal Hurley stepped out from her office and led a man to the door. "If we choose you, you'll receive a call from us in a couple days," Hurley explained in such a way that made it sound like he shouldn't waste much time waiting by the phone. Hurley shut the door behind him and turned on both the girls. "Who's next?" the vice principal asked. "She was," the woman in the pink cardigan said, pointing to Hannah. Hannah was caught off guard. "But you were here first," she whispered to the woman. "I insist," the woman said very loudly for the vice principal to hear. She was playing a game, putting Hannah Lynn in a tough position. If Hannah accepted her offer, she came off looking selfish. If she tried arguing, she'd simply come off as difficult and argumentative. There was no point fighting the woman. Hurley would only see that as childish behavior. Instead, Hannah jumped off her chair and offered Mrs. Hurley a hand. "My name is Hannah Lynn." "I'm yawning because this is what I do when this is not part of the writing." Alright, I'm going to water break now. Water break, do. Oh, I needed that. Water break, do. My name is Hannah Lynn, she said. "We met once at a parent-teacher conference last year. I don't know if you'd remember." Hurley just smiled and shook Hannah's hand. I already figured her accent was British. Come into my office, she insisted. Hannah provided the teacher her resume and followed her into the most intimidating office Hannah had ever seen in a school. There were no motivational posters, only lists of rules printed on plain paper and taped to the walls. Hannah had heard from Rachel and her friends that Hurley was a bitch. She would have been lucky if the interview had been with the principal, a very loud but agreeable man. Instead, it seemed her interview was already off to a bad start that didn't seem likely to improve any time soon. Mrs. Hurley sat Hannah down in front of her desk and dropped into her own chair on the other side. Again. Sorry. Pulling a pen and a notebook from a drawer, she set them down on the table. Also, I apologize if I made you yawn. I know it's contagious. She set them down on the table, opened to page 1, and began to scribble notes. After each point, made with a bold arrow, Hurley would glance up at Hannah and then scribble more into her book. Figuring Hurley's actions as a sign the interview had already started, Hannah broke the quiet. You already know my daughter goes here, she told the vice principal, but I promise it won't be any kind of complication. We have a great relationship, me and her, and it'll be worth the risk to choose me. I have had a lot of experience with secretarial duties as well. I am quite used to dealing with high-stress situations where mistakes could literally mean death. Yes, Hurley said as she looked over the resume Hannah had handed her. From your time working at Credit Valley Hospital, I see you've had a lot of jobs over the past number of years. I move around a lot, Hannah told the vice principal, but I'll be here until my youngest Jacob graduates, she clarified. That's a promise. Rachel Lynn Smith, Hurley said, Hannah's daughter's name, completely changing the flow of the interview. Why didn't you take your husband's name? He didn't want me to, Hannah told the woman, unsure what that had to do with the job. Damn it. Sorry. How are you with kids? Mrs. Hurley asked. Great, Hannah lied with a smile. They love me. Interesting, Hurley said, scribbling it onto her paper, because I have been concerned lately with your daughter. What has she done this time? Hannah asked, her heart sinking. It's nothing that she's done, Hurley admitted. Exactly. It's more the way she's been dressing. I happen to believe all this goth, devil worship movement is really just a big cry for attention. She dropped her pen. How can I expect you to be attentive to the students when you can't even attend to the very basic needs of your own daughter? Hannah leaned forward in her chair, holding onto the arms in a desperate attempt to keep from jumping out and strangling the woman. You can sit there, lady, and tell me and ask me any damn question you like, Hannah said. You can even scrutinize me all day long, if it pleases you. But don't you dare criticize my children, because I will not sit here and listen. Hurley seemed to think deeply for a long number of seconds before finally saying, All right, then I believe we're done here. Hurley tried to get up, but Hannah got up first and swung the door open exuberantly as she hustled out of the office. The woman in the pink cardigan, still waiting where they'd left her, jumped up with excitement at Hurley's beckon. Before we start, the woman said, you should know I baked these delicious cookies to help you relax for our interview. Wow, Mrs. Hurley said, taking the Tupperware container from the lady and sniffing it. These cookies smell like $40,000 a year and summer's off. Scene change, scene change, scene change. Rachel watched Jason excitedly pull the release lever for the third time, sending the wrecking ball free-falling towards a floating wooden platform that was once a building's second floor. The ball hit the wood with a now familiar boom. There was no noticeable change in the seemingly indestructible floor, but the ball cracked slightly this time from the impact. Well, that's something you don't see every day, Rachel could hear Rex grumble to himself as Jason pulled the ball back into the air. And then again. Sorry, I apologize again. Turn the thing off, Rex yelled to Jason. It's not working. Jason turned off the crane, reluctantly of course, and stepped out from the cockpit. Jumping off the tread, Jason landed beside Rex and shot him a shrug. At least we had some fun. Mike and Rachel were enjoying themselves watching the construction crew try to figure out any way to bring the hardwood floor down. Jason had wanted to bring a ladder in and take a closer look at the floor, but Rex wouldn't let anyone get close. Not until the mayor comes, he said, though Rachel wasn't sure that what the mayor would do. Rachel was just glad, however, that for once weird things were going on that didn't involve her in the slightest. She could happily watch with passing interest as an observer from the sidelines as the construction crew worked away at the problem. Not all the people under Rex's command had continued to work. One guy in particular had insisted the floor was a portal to some Catholic hell, and he'd swayed a number of his coworkers to join him in prayer on the lawn next door. Rachel had heard the sirens coming from quite a distance away, but she hadn't expected that they were simply escorting a long black limo. Turning the corner onto Tipperary, the motorcade pulled up in front of the site and the sirens went dead. A portly woman wearing a black suit stepped out from the passenger seat and circled the limo as fast as her short legs could carry her. You think that's the mayor? Mike asked Rachel. She shrugged, though she found it unlikely. The mayor of Mississauga was supposed to be old. Silent yawn. Alright, there we go. Everyone out! Everyone out! The woman yelled, waving her arms wildly with such commotion that her hair fell into her eyes. She had a Microsoft Surface tablet clutched tightly in one hand and stopped for a moment to type a couple things onto the screen. The woman approached Rex. This has become a confidential zone, she told him. The mayor wants this area clear of all civilians now. You heard the lady, Rex shouted to his men. Get out of here. You all get the rest of the day off. She shot the round woman a glance and added, Paid leave, of course. Everyone here will be paid for a full day's work, the woman confirmed, turning so she could shout to everyone as they left. You'll all be receiving non-disclosure agreements in the mail. I expect them all back to me by the end of the week, or we will come find you. That's quite enough, Jane, a voice said from the back seat of the limo. It sounded harsh and weathered, yet melodic, like the crooning of an old storyteller. So can I tell my wife? One man from the next lawn over asked. I mean, I haven't signed the form yet. I haven't signed the form yet. No, I haven't signed the form yet. I would really rather you didn't, the voice of the mayor said. The back door swung open, and an older woman, looking to be in her 70s or 80s, stepped gingerly out from the limo. She closed the door behind her and leaned a hand against the car as she peered across the lawn at the man who'd spoken. And I don't want to see this mentioned on your Facebook pages, the mayor said. I will be checking them all personally tonight. She gave the men a wink, and they all laughed as they got into their cars and started to leave. The mayor looked good for her age, wearing a baby blue tube top under a black velvet blazer. Her black dress pants were equally formal and stylish, though her shoes were simple Nike runners. Sorry, silent yawn. Which is better than the non-silent yawn. It is. Nike runners. She also made no attempt to hide or disguise her shimmering gray hair. Instead, she wore it in a bun, and had from her ears 2 large hanging diamond earrings. Mayor Gray? Mayor Gray, Rachel heard Rex say, offering the mayor his hand. I'm heading this project, he told her importantly. Rex, the mayor said, ignoring his hand and pulling a pair of dorky-looking glasses from her inside coat pocket. It's been long since we last met. She put the glasses on and began to survey the site. I'm amazed you remember me, Rex said in surprise. I was just another grunt then. Still the mayor seemed to ignore him. Her assistant, Jane, joined Gray's side, her nose buried in her computer. Remember, the portly assistant said, you have a meeting with the school board at 11 and lunch with the Prime Minister at 1. Cancel the meeting, the mayor said, and tell the Prime Minister that I might be late for our lunch. This could be a level 3. Might I remind you, Jane muttered, that under Section 12, subsection 11, C, I'm not to allow you within 5 meters of a level 3 or higher event, for your own protection. That's why I simply said it could be a 3, Gray said, and Rachel thought she saw a smile form on the older woman's lips, though from her distance it could have easily been a grimace. Oh, yeah. Could have been a yawn. For now, it's still level 1 until we can find a cause. Did you see me swing that thing? Jason asked Mike and Rachel in excitement as he joined them at Mike's car. Yeah, I was a wrecking machine. Except you couldn't even demolish some hardwood floor, Mike joked. I think you were doing it wrong. I'd like to see you do better. Mike pulled his keys from his pocket and swung them casually from his finger. Should we get going now? He asked them. Jason didn't answer, but instead looked at Rachel. She was still listening in on the mayor's conversation, something Mike had been completely unaware of, but Jason had cued in on right away. The mayor surveyed the surrounding area and stopped at the sight of Jason, Mike, and Rachel. Gray dropped her glasses to the tip of her nose and peered over the rims at them, and then again through the lenses. Finally taking the glasses off completely, she leaned in close and whispered to Jane, "Can you bring that girl over here? Politely, mind." "She wants to talk to me," Rachel told her friends, who both looked at her in surprise. "How could you know that?" Mike asked her, thoroughly confused. Jason didn't seem to mind. Maybe that means we can stay," he told Mike. "Yeah," Mike said with much less enthusiasm, "'cause this is where I want to be when demons start spewing out of that thing." Rachel frowned at Mike. "You didn't actually believe that religious nut job, did you?" she asked, mentioning to the grass where a circle of people had been praying only minutes earlier. "Not really," Mike said, "but it would be pretty cool if that stuff was real." He seemed to think for a moment. "Maybe we should stay. Getting killed on the front lines of a battle against stampeding demons really seems like a pretty awesome way to die to me." Rachel chuckled. It was funny to imagine demons from hell invading Earth, and there she'd be, Earth's defender, a 16-year-old vampire. Rachel hadn't put much thought into her religious views lately. She'd been far too busy dealing with being a vampire, without even wondering what the existence of vampires might mean. Did it mean the Christians were right? Was there a heaven and a hell? Was she doomed now to go to hell, or was she going to live forever? "You there!" Jane called, approaching them at a steady pace. Seeing the woman close up, Rachel was surprised to find that Jane was only slightly taller than her. "The mayor, Sylvia Gray, would like to talk to you." "Thanks," Rachel told the assistant, throwing Mike a knowing glance. "You'll be okay here, right?" Mike pulled a couple beers from the back of his car. "Oh, we'll be fine. We'll be fine," Jason told her with a smile. She followed Jane, who wouldn't stop talking. Sorry about that. Who wouldn't stop? She followed Jane, who wouldn't stop talking. "I've got liability forms here that I need you to sign," the woman told Rachel, passing her the tablet. "Liability?" Rachel asked. "I thought she just wanted to talk to me." "Of course," Jane said with a sweet smile, "though
Should anything happen to you by strange circumstances not 100% within our control, we want it clear that we will not be liable. We just want to avoid any freak accidents."
"Do freak accidents happen often during talks with the mayor?" Rachel asked.
"You have no idea."
Rachel had to believe her umbrella really precariously. Oh, Rachel had to balance her umbrella really precariously against her elbow to both hold and use the device. Holding Jane's fake pen, she signed her name on the line.
"And print your name here,"
Jane said, pointing. Rachel did as instructed and handed the device back.
"All right, Rachel Lynn Smith,"
she continued, reading Rachel's name from the screen.
"Please don't touch the mayor unless she asks to be touched. If she finds your conversation topic boring, she holds every right to change it on a whim, and you're expected to just follow her lead. Also, if her nose starts to bleed, you need to find me right away."
"That's quite enough, Jane," the mayor said, leaning against the limo with a friendly smile, her eyes back to studying the anomaly.
"Her name is Rachel Lynn Smith,"
Jane told Mayor Gray. "Thank you, Jane," Gray said. "This is, however, a private conversation." Jane backed away.
"Yes, Mrs. Gray."
Mayor Gray smiled warmly at Rachel, giving her the odd impression that she should trust the elderly woman. But after Eckhart, Rachel had learned to resist her gut on those sorts of things. "I keep telling her to call me Sylvia," Gray said, watching Jane leave earshot, "but she's far too formal, I'm afraid."
"Well," said Rachel, "I couldn't care less about formalities, Sylvia."
The mayor frowned, and Rachel quickly wondered if she'd said something wrong. Sylvia Gray didn't respond to what she'd said, thankfully, instead changing the topic, like Jane had warned.
"What do you think is going on here?"
Her attention had returned to the construction site. Why was the mayor interested in what she thought?
"My friend thinks it's a gateway to hell," she told Gray.
Gray chuckled.
"Interesting theory," she told Rachel. "I'm just a little confused." "That's understandable,"
Rachel told Gray.
"You see," said the mayor, "I thought there were no more vampires in Mississauga, and yet here you are, on the brightest day of the week. It's like the setup for a bad joke."
Apostrophe S, sorry. It is like the setup for a bad joke.
"You know,"
Rachel began to say, her heart jumping into her throat,
"that you're a vampire?"
Gray asked, her attention firmly on Rachel now.
"Yes. See, my glasses are special."
She handed her large, dorky-looking glasses to Rachel. The teen vampire wasn't sure if she should trust Mayor Gray, but her curiosity got the better of her. Putting the glasses on, Rachel knew exactly what Gray had meant. All the colors were weird and swirling, like the whole world was an Emily Carr painting. The mayor was a solid blue, and the car was gray. Nothing had any dimension, but instead swirled into everything else. Rachel pulled the glasses off and handed them back to Gray. Her head hurt from whatever it had been she'd just seen.
"It takes some getting used to,"
Gray said, putting the glasses back on her face.
"Now, tell me, do you kill people? Be honest, so I know if you're lying."
Let's see here, how many more pages of this is there? Alright, we might stop after this scene. Do what I was saying about half and half on the longer scenes, because I am definitely starting to lose myself here. Where does it say how long? Oh, it's been about an hour. Okay, cool. We're at an hour so far. Alright, back to,
"It takes some getting used to,"
Gray said, putting the glasses back on her face.
"Now tell me, do you kill people? Be honest, now. I'll know if you're lying."
"No," Rachel said, as honestly as she could.
"I get my blood delivered from a pig farm, or cow farm or something gross like that? Brilliant, Mayor Gray said, a smile reforming on her lips. I mean, I had suspicions when I saw you hanging with your human friend over there, but I was almost afraid to hope. Rachel wasn't sure what Gray was talking about, but she seemed very happy about something. So you're able to resist the urges of your species? Gray asked Rachel. She nodded, and the mayor laughed. I've always wanted to believe that vampires were as capable as any other at higher reasoning. I even go to school, Rachel said with a shy smile. To be surrounded by that many beating hearts? The mayor mumbled in awe. You must have an impregnable will. Rachel didn't want to tell the mayor that she'd only been a vampire for a week now, and there was still plenty of time for everything to go belly up. Have you met many other vampires? Rachel asked instead. There had to be better vampires out there somewhere. Sorry? Where was I here? Rachel didn't want to tell the mayor that she'd only been a vampire for a week now, and there was still plenty time for everything to go belly up. I've already read all this. Oh well. Have you met many other vampires? Rachel asked instead. There ought to be better vampires out there than Eckhart. Only one before you, Gray said, shuddering a little. It didn't go too well for me, I must say. That seems like a trend, Rachel admitted. Andrew had told her everything the librarian had said to him, including details about the Sunfire Gang's one run-in with a vampire. It didn't end well for them either. Andrew had told her everything over Skype, as his parents had grounded him pretty much indefinitely for fighting. Apparently, he needed 20 stitches and had 20 holy shit. Oh my god, he died! Apparently, he needed 20 stitches and had 2 bruised ribs, as well as a concussion. Besides this fine young lady and her friends, Sylvia Gray called out, is the area clear, Jane? Yes, ma'am, said the assistant, rejoining their conversation. Excellent, Gray said. I believe we've wasted enough time here, don't you? Yes, ma'am, Jane repeated, though more exaggerated the second time. Opening the back door of the limo, she pulled out a very long but surprisingly thin bag. The bag was taller than Jane, and almost as tall as Gray. It looked like a misshapen hockey bag, and Rachel could only imagine what kind of special scanning equipment or high-tech weaponry might be inside. Something very classified, you could only imagine. The contents made a dull thud as Jane laid the bag gently across the trunk of the limo. Gray grabbed the zipper and set it the entire way from end to end. We're going to have to figure out for ourselves just what's keeping that floor rooted in place, Gray told Rachel as she pulled the folds of the bag back to reveal 3 long, gnarled lengths of wood, each winding around the other to create one incredibly long and underwhelming walking stick. Rachel's jaw dropped, seemingly pretty much the opposite of what she had been expecting. From Gary's smile, Rachel could tell the mayor knew exactly what was going on in her head. What? Mayor Gray said rhetorically, lifting the thing from its bag and stabbing one end into the ground. You look like you've never seen a wizard's staff before. And this is the halfway point of the chapter, so I'm going to stop it there for now. We've reached the hour mark, a little past the hour, and I've already accidentally zoned out once. So I'm going to stop there. I work soon anyway. So, yeah, don't worry. I promise you're not going to have to wait a month to find out how this chapter ends. I swear to God. That is quite a weird place to end it, too. So the mayor is a wizard of some kind, or has a wizard staff anyway. What is that about? Crazy. I mean, I know what it's about, but you don't know what it's about. Nobody knows what it's about but me and my Patreon readers. And my ex-Patreon reader who voted that this is his favorite book. Alright, so next time we will continue this chapter. It will be probably this weekend. I will do a podcast this weekend, so they will be very close together. And then maybe next weekend I will start the next chapter, and we'll try to do that for a little bit. The chapter that I am writing this month for Patreon that I need to start thinking about now because it's January. The chapter is for urban fantasy, so it's for this universe. So that's fun. So in a way, reading this is like homework. I'm getting ready for the new chapter by reading the old stuff. So this has been a lot of fun, especially because Mayor Gray. It's actually this chapter actually has a lot to do with the next chapter I'm going to be reading, which is like 10 chapters away. Oh, see, this is 10, and then there's 5 more of this chapter, this book, and then the next book I'm on chapter 7. Yeah, so about yeah, a little over 10 chapters. 12 chapters between books. And Mayor Gray is still involved. So, she matters, I guess, now. In fact, not only does she matter, but there's a spin off called Dakota Slade, and she's in that too! She's everywhere! So I wanted to apologize again. There was something I said that my last podcast where I think I zoned out one too many times, and I was just kind of yelled something like, just read the book, stop listening to this podcast. Obviously I didn't mean that. I hope you guys keep listening because I love you guys very much. I was being facetious, that's all. I was being silly. I was having a bit of fun. Obviously I don't actually want you to stop listening. um, even if you did subscribe to my Patreon and read the book, how would I know that everyone did and I didn't? You know, even then there'd be new people finding it, so I would have to keep on recording these anyway. So don't stop listening on my behalf, but feel free to stop listening if you find these podcasts to be completely unbearable. I understand I am not the best podcaster in the world. I think I yawned like 20 times in that reading, and I definitely slowed down as I kept reading. I lost my energy. I work nights. I apologize. Remember, you can always subscribe to my Patreon and help fund me to one day not have to work nights anymore. And then I'd be able to write full time. I'd be able to write more than one chapter a month. I'd be able to release tons of podcasts. It would be amazing. Just so amazing. I would do anything to just write for a living. That's my goal in life. And I'll make it to that. Yeah, I will make it to that goal somehow. I was gonna say I am a writer. I just still have to work a second job. That's really my first job, and this is my second job. Um, I need to stop talking about things, but so remember you can go to 99geek.ca and see a whole ton of stuff that's for offer. There's links to my blog where you can see a whole ton of stuff that's for offer, including now free chapters as they're being released on my Patreon because I have so few Patreon subscribers and I'm desperate for people to read my stuff because I'm so lonely and so depressed all the time. And self-conscious. My self-esteem has just it was very high to begin with, so like, but um, anyway, so I play video games. You can find streams of video games, and those are very exciting. Where I play video games, and the games are played in video format. I'm currently playing Hitman a bunch, and I've been playing a bunch of Battlefield. One guy I was playing Battlefield with, he turned out to be a conservative, so I stopped playing with him. And I actually invited him a couple times. I was like, you know what? I just need friends. We gotta try and cross a divide somehow, in some way. And maybe crossing that divide means fighting against Nazis in World War II. In Battlefield 5, which, sometimes you are the Nazis, so then that gets a little awkward, where it's like, we gotta stop the fucking British so that we can keep killing Jews. Yeah. So, woo, Nazis. Anyway, that sounds like a good place to end it. Remember 99geek.ca if you hate Nazis as much as I do. And if you like Nazis, you know what? Subscribe to my Patreon anyway. Read my stuff. Maybe I can change your mind. I know I'm gonna change your mind because conservatives suck, Nazis suck, the right sucks, the far right sucks. There is only one answer, one solution, and that's socialism. I'm sorry, but if you want the Star Trek future, then we will have to have a basic paid wage to every citizen, like $1,000 or something like that, to every citizen every month by the government, and then taxes are just gonna have to go up a lot for everyone, but the poorest people. So I mean, like, you know, even somebody who's super rich will still get that $1,000 a month. He's just also going to be paying way more than that $1,000 a month in taxes. Um, so yes, uh, that's my plan for saving world's economy. But nobody came to listen to that. So I have a whole argument which was talked about on my blog. You can check it out there. That involves Star Trek somewhat. It sounds dumb, but it's not. It's not dumb. It was brought up recently in politics, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot. So check out my argument on my blog. You don't have to agree, but feel free to comment and um, you know, comment, and I'll listen to you, but in reading form of listeningness. Besides that, have I gone through everything that's been going on? Sure, why not? I'm just gonna stop it here. So it's been fun. You guys are awesome. Ending this podcast. May the force be with you.